Welcome, guys, back to the Grateful Living podcast. Today, I'm thankful to have Osamase Ekhator with me. Osamase is a Boston-based poet, writer, and author. His debut book, Situationship, was invited to the 2019 Brooklyn Book Festival on behalf of the AZURE Literary Group. It was also recognized by the 2020 North Street Book Prize and was studied at the University of Bonn in Germany. Osamase will be releasing his second book, I Am You, on July 26th. Osamase is also going to be starting his MBA at Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management starting this fall. Osamase, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Pleasure to be back.
Yes, sir. Of course, thankful to have you on. For people that are used to listening to Grateful Living podcast interviews at this point, I usually ask guests, take us back to the beginning, where you grew up, your family situation, and what type of kid you were. But Osamase has actually been on this podcast before. He was on in July of 2020 and talked about his background growing up and talked about situationship there. So feel free to listen or watch that interview to learn more about his, growing up from childhood to adulthood. Instead, I guess, we last talked, publicly in July of 2020. Do you want to catch people up, on how life has been these past 2 years? In your announcement trailer, you talked about having writer's block, having other things go on, like studying for the GMAT. Maybe update the fans on what life has been like since July of 2020.
Yeah. And I'll also say, like you mentioned, right, for anyone that's interested in hearing the first episode or watching the first episode, highly recommend it. But just a disclaimer, when you look at it, I look a lot different. Look, it was during COVID time, it was like dealing with 4th of July stuff. So, I looked a little sick, so don't mind my appearance in that video. That's just a disclaimer, okay? But an update on how things have been. You mentioned it all in regards to, I was studying for my GMAT for more than a year. So for anyone that's not familiar with the GMAT, in order to attend some of the top business schools in the country, a lot of them look at GMAT scores as well as GRE scores. So think of it like a big boy SAT, basically. And I was not good at that big boy SAT. I took that bad boy probably, I think I took the GMAT like 3 times. I took the GRE 2 times. And yeah, it just was not working out. I had a lot of tutoring sessions, whether it be tutoring class or like one-on-ones. It was tough. And, when I decided to start working towards my MBA, I thought I could write the book simultaneously. But quickly, especially as the GMAT thing was not working out like I expected, I had to really focus on that. And it really pained me to do so, but I kind of had to put a pause to, working on this upcoming book. And that was a decision I made, and I don't regret it. However, it was tough because, and I've had this discussion too with my friend who is going to med school, and he has his own side passions as well. His is more so of, exercising and fencing. But, when you kind of put a hold on what makes you happy creatively and you focus on this, this long-term thing, sometimes it's kind of hard to get out of a dark space. For me, I kept failing the GMAT, right? Which is okay. Not everyone's good at those tests. However, I didn't have now, that's the negative side of things, but I didn't really have the positive side in regards to creative work because my creative work was on hold. So with all that being said, I was kind of getting into not a scary space, but definitely a darker space in my life because there was a lot of negativity, it felt like, but I was able to stay strong in that regard. And after the 5th test, I say, look, y'all are going to get what you get. All you schools, you're going to get what you get. Take this and run with it. If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't. And I'm happy with the schools that did accept me. I did get accepted into Boston College, best school in the world. Obviously we went there undergrad.
Yes, yes.
I also was accepted into the University of Virginia on a full ride, then Duke University, and then Michigan State University, and then lastly Northwestern. Obviously, I chose Northwestern. Sorry, BC, I got to switch it up, but choosing Northwestern, right above Chicago. So I'm looking forward to that. And once I kind of got that acceptance letter, or at least once I finished the applications in January, I said, all right, that's out the way. Time to get back to it. Time to get back to the book. I know I mentioned this to you offline, but the book had nearly been finished for about like a year. So technically, if I didn't have the whole grad school thing, I could have released this last year. But I wasn't mentally ready. I wasn't mentally there. I still had to do final edits and then plan all the marketing.
Yeah.
But by January this year, once all of the school stuff was out the way, before I'd even known about Northwestern, I was ready to finally get this book thing done. It was paining me to like hold on to this for so long. So like just being able to now have it being, released, and so far when it comes to the marketing, gotten a great reception. And this morning I was checking the Amazon's new releases or upcoming releases for Black African American poetry. And earlier on when I looked, it was like at number 45. Now it's at 7. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
Hopefully by the time that you all are watching this interview, it's not lower than 7, or at least hopefully it's not like all the way down. If it is, it's okay. But at least I got to 7 so far. So I'm just really excited. I'm really happy about, what's to come. And I know a long-winded answer to your question of how things have been since, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, obviously things worked out as, you're going to a very good business school with Northwestern, but in the moment of maybe taking that first or second GMAT, can you talk about what kept you going, or how you kept that perseverance mindset? I think a lot of people might have taken it once and just been like, all right, this is not for me. I'm not going to go to business school, and you kept going. What was the mindset?
Yeah. Couple of things, couple of factors, right? So just me in general, I don't quit. I'm pretty stubborn. I'm pretty competitive. So like that was driving me. And I know you all can probably see Kobe in the back, RIP. I got, that mama mentality of just like keep on putting the hours, like good things that are to come to you do not come easy, right? You have to work really, really hard for them. And even the times where you think that it's time to quit, you still got to try. And so just keep on pushing. And, that's one factor, just my natural being. But I also had, external factors. So for example, I was in an MBA prep program called Management Leadership for Tomorrow, acronym MLT. Shout out to my MLT family. Shout out to my MLT coach. It is a prep program that allows you to prepare for school. You get to meet with admissions counselors. You have a coach, and they have a requirement too for the GMAT. So like they have their own requirements, which I won't get into too much detail, but I had my coach, also prepping me, also telling me that, hey, it's okay. A lot of people don't pass it on the first attempt. Hey, it's okay. A lot of people don't pass it on the second attempt. Hey, it's okay. It's the third attempt. Get in there, but keep on trying.
Yeah.
4th 5 is when she kind of told me like, hey, forget it. Like we're gonna rock with your best score. And whoever likes you is whoever likes you. So just look forward to it. And it's interesting. A lot of business schools say that we don't only look at your test scores, but I won't share my opinions on this platform. But I think that the schools that I did get into, they obviously looked at me as a full candidate versus just my scores. And I really appreciate them for that. And it's something that my coach is telling me, but it's kind of hard to believe when you're in that space. So overall, once again, like I just don't tend to quit. And I had good, a good support system around me to keep me pushing. Because I knew this was for something that I truly wanted to do in the future. So yeah.
Yeah. Throughout this time, you've been able to, even though you talked about having writer's block, you've been able to work on poetry and things of that nature. I'm curious, for anyone out there that's might have a passion on the side or things of that nature, how have you managed, your personal life, your regular job, studying for the GMAT, and then also including poetry? I'm sure there have been at times where people have been like, oh, just like that isn't anything, just don't do that, or you know maybe just do one Instagram post a month and you're good, or but you kept at it, and you're publishing this. um how did you do that?
Yeah. So with when it comes to the poetry, I think to answer that question, sometimes you have to know what to sacrifice. So in the past year, I had to sacrifice the poetry in a sense. That doesn't mean I gave up on my dream. I knew what the long term dream was. Once again, I knew I had this book, you know, tucked for like a whole year. But I also knew that I'm focusing on business school. I'm dealing with other personal stuff, and I don't, I'm not in the mental space to put out good poetry right now. I had to tell myself that because at first, early in my, let's say, poetry career, I was posting a lot more consistently, posting a lot more poetry consistently. But in the past year, or year, maybe you could say year and some change. I had so many other things going on that I found myself saying, all right, I haven't posted in a while. I have to come up with new poetry. Like I have to. And the poetry that I was coming up with, luckily I didn't publish it, but the poetry I was coming up with was not the greatest, in my opinion. I didn't feel comfortable with publishing it because it wasn't up to what my standards were. And so I had to tell myself that first off, don't force yourself to write. That's something that Langston Hughes, my favorite poet of all time, has I said in the past. Don't force yourself to write. The poem that you force yourself to write that's not the one that you should be releasing. It should come to you naturally. Whatever your muses are, whenever you just feel like, all right, it's time to write, that's when you should write. And so I had to use that approach, which is why I think last year I only published on my Instagram, I think published like 3 or 4 poems, probably 3 to 4 poems on my Instagram, which is really low for what I've done in the past. But it's because I was working on other things. It's because I knew that in 2022, I would have a whole book out. I would have a lot more content, right? I knew all of that, and that kind of kept me sane for that year. It kept me sane. And so to answer that question, once again, sometimes you need to know what to sacrifice, and that might be your dream per se. But if you have a long-term goal for it after, then you taking that time off of it is not going to hurt because this is more so a short-term pause for a more long-term gain.
Yeah. So let's get into the book. It's called I Am You. Can you talk about the writing process and how you came about putting it all together? There's obviously 3 themes of love, religion, and social injustice. How did you come up with these themes, and how was the writing process of accumulating the chapters?
Yeah. So for the writing process, so just a couple of Easter eggs, right? So Situationship was supposed to be about, I think I ended up publishing only 30 poems from Situationship, but initially it was supposed to be like, let's say 50, 60 poems. It was supposed to be a much larger book, and that book was kind of cut in half. One was love, which ended up being Situationship, and the other was race. It was actually called Swap for a Race. It's something I started in college for a poetry class, and I expanded into an actual book. My literary consultant told me to not do that. That's another thing that creatives have to learn how to do is take feedback. I know sometimes with creatives we're very vulnerable with our work, or very sensitive about our work because it's our personal. We're putting ourselves out there for people. So when we take feedback, it hurts. But sometimes you got to take that feedback for, once again, like a better result. So she told me that, hey, this is all great individual poems, but I see 2 books in here. And I think you should cut this in half because the story that you're trying to write, I don't think you're there yet. Luckily, I am there now because I Am You is that same idea. And she approved it this time. So I had to grow into that. But overall, right, so I had to cut it in half. So now I had this other set of poems that were more related to race. I had those for some time. I took those poems. I went back to my idea of what if I did a book about a love triangle, right? Situationship was different because it was mostly two characters. It was one character chasing the other, right? And how that tends to take form in the space of a situationship. This book, it's no longer the character that's the narrator chasing per se, but now they have options. Now they have two people that are, potential mates, let's say. How does that person, deal with that kind of situation? And, I had two of the characters represent, and one's A America, represents America. The other one is Nala, which represents a strong Black woman, right? And so that's what I made the love triangle. And so I took those initial sets of unreleased poems, made new poems to fit this storyline, to fit this theme, or these themes of, once again, religion, love, and social injustice. And I was able to put them all together. So that's from a narrative standpoint, that's how I was able to kind of make IMU. IMU is 60 poems, so almost double Situationship, 130 pages, which is like a lot more than Situationship. So, that's the narrative process. For each poem individually, the writing process for that were the current events. Some of these poems have been published already. Some of these poems were written and, posted on my Instagram during the time of, George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. So some of these poems, are a little bit, I would say, dated. However, I knew that when I wrote these poems that, unfortunately, this kind of content and subject is always going to be at the front of things when it comes to social injustice. And so, so these poems are written at different times, some more recent than others, but I think as a collective, they form a great story, and I'm really excited for people to take a look at it.
Yeah. Can you talk about your relationship with speaking about your experiences with race? Obviously, George Floyd, I think, brought to America, and like a different level of recognition, to the entire society. But I think people of color had always recognized that these things had already been happening, and maybe not videoed as well or whatnot. Has this always been in you? Because it's not easy. I look at, I remember watching The Last Dance, and we're talking about Michael Jordan, and he talked about, he didn't want to be polarizing, right? And he didn't feel like it was his responsibility. When did you feel comfortable taking on that responsibility, and even though people might read something and judge you, you're good with that?
Yeah, great question. I guess part of it is my background, right? So my dad is a civil rights activist, human rights activist from Nigeria. So he's done a lot of work in Nigeria. I grew up proofreading his petitions that he would send back to the Nigerian government. And so I kind of already had that from my own history of just knowing how to put words to an issue and, find potential solutions in a way that is digestible. My mother is a pastor as well. So, that's another outspoken personality that's sharing words of wisdom or stories of that nature, right? So I already had that in my DNA of being able to, be outspoken and speak on topics that maybe others aren't necessarily good at speaking on or don't want to hear. Now, for me personally, when I was finally able to talk on these topics, I know that back at BC, I kind of had a little, that's when I started to actually perform poetry, spoken word. I knew which topics immediately that I kind of were drawn to, which was love and race. And my senior year, actually my junior and senior year, I ran a poetry event called Juice, which I had other local Boston College poets share their experience of what it meant to be a Black student on campus. And I had an ally, with that being my professor, my acting professor. I took an acting class senior year, junior year. So and that was a cool class. But he was, the person that was kind of producing this event and allowed me to just run wild with it. And so those are some of my first times, like actually like talking about these topics confidently. Now, when it comes to the corporate space, corporate America, that's definitely a hard space to kind of talk about these subjects. Um, I'm no longer at my old employer because I'm preparing for business school, but at my previous employer, um, I was the only one of two Black people on our team. And I remember when George Floyd happened, I just remember like, it's the pandemic, so we're all sitting in front of a TV, we're all at home, and like, I don't even like watching the news like that. But it's so hard to not watch. It's so hard to not watch that video and not feel away. It's so hard to not see what's going on in these streets because this is your country too. Like you want to be informed and you empathize and you feel for everyone that is experiencing this and you see yourself in all those people because you might be the next person, unfortunately, right? And so I knew that I was drawn to this. However, it felt like the rest of my team wasn't because when you're starting a conversation before a meeting, that's when you kind of have some downtime to kind of talk about these things openly before you actually get to the topic at hand. And nobody was bringing it up. And so I knew I felt the way about it. I felt really disappointed. I felt really alone. And I brought that up to my manager. Thank God that she was an amazing manager. And she's a white woman, but a white woman that was open to hearing this. And not only open to hearing this, apologize. And not only apologize, but then gave me the platform to now try to make a change. Right. And with that, we led to a book club where that was awesome because then it gave us an actual, a foundation. We could all read this together and find the words, the feelings that we have. And it was a great experience. I think it made us all come together become closer. And it made me also realize that it's not that some of my coworkers didn't want to talk about this because they didn't care. It's because they didn't know how to. They didn't know how to say these, talk about these things without coming off as maybe ignorant or offending somebody, right? And that's completely fair, right? Even myself as a Black man, I sometimes don't want to say something that might offend someone else of another race, culture, or gender, right? And so it just helped us all talk about these things. And once again, it was another opportunity for me to start speaking up on these topics. And I learned how to talk to people without attacking per se, without making them feel attacked. Where a lot of my poetry, and I've been told this in the past, is a matter of fact. It's hard to like debate it because I'm just saying what it is. I'm not really obviously I'm passionate about what I'm saying, but I'm just sharing to you what my experience is, or maybe what my brother's experience is, or my sister's experiences, cousins, family, all of that. And then I want you to now take that and do whatever you want with that. I want you to now fill in the blanks, right, for yourself. I'm sharing my experience that you can now learn. And I think that has been effective. I think that has helped people to listen a little bit more, even if they don't disagree. At least, even if they do disagree, I planted a seed, and they now can keep this in the back of their mind whenever they're in spaces having the same conversation with another person. And so I think that's what's helped me not feel like I have a burden when I'm talking about these things. Like unlike Michael, I don't feel like I'm polarized. If I speak about these things, I'm just speaking. And so, yeah, I would say that's kind of how I got to this space of being able to talk about these topics.
Yeah. I guess on that topic, you talk about, the bullying from your dialect, and then maybe, different forms of racism in terms of maybe 60 years ago, it was go to the back of the bus. But today it's, microaggressions, maybe someone who's not Black saying the N-word because it's in a rap song, things of that nature. I guess what were you hoping for maybe the, you know, people that aren't of color to reflect on? And maybe you answered some of that in that last answer, but um, was it something that specifically you hope they reflected on?
Yeah. So I would say that, yeah, I wanted them to realize that it's not going to be because so when it comes to racism or to be called a racist, and this is from, part of this is from my learning with the White Fragility books. I can't take credit for all of this. Shout out to Dr. Robin DiAngelo. But sometimes when you're called a racist, you assume that you're being called a bad person. It's called the good bad binary. So you've called me a racist. That means I'm a bad person. That means I'm walking around with a KKK hoodie. That's not what that means. Okay. Racism, by its true definition, is someone who has power socially has the ability to oppress another because of that power. And if you look at this country, obviously, which skin tone is more so in power. That's just the definition of racism, right? And so you could be a good person, but you may have racist tendencies because you grew up in a country or in this system, right? And so what I was trying to do with this book was show people that racism isn't, once again, the 1960s definition of racism per se. It's not walking around in a KKK hoodie. It's not walking around calling people the N-word. It's not walking around and saying that you have to go sit at the back of the bus or you have to use the black only bathroom. It's not that, but it's still happening in different ways. And so the poem that you referenced it's called Virgin. And yeah, I explained kind of the new essence of racism per se, or different new experiences that still hurt, just as much in this new age, version. And so I just wanted, people that are not of this culture to realize that, to be mindful of their privilege. And when you're mindful of it, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can change the system, but at least you're mindful of your privilege. At least you're mindful that, ooh, I might have an unconscious bias towards a person, or I might even putting a stereotype on somebody because of whatever the reasoning is. I just wanted people to be mindful of it. And the same thing honestly goes for people of color. I talk about, the conflict between, let's say, African Americans, right? So people that were brought to this country through the slave trade, years ago, and then also Africans, let's say new immigrants. There is a conflict there. Maybe we could talk about it later on, but sometimes we have our own unconscious bias. I know that even myself, because I grew up in this country when I was younger, if I'm walking down the street at night and I see somebody in a hoodie of color, I'm not going to just dap them up and say, "What's up, my brother?" I'm probably crossing the street, right? Because I have this idea of what it means when somebody of color is wearing a hoodie. That's not right. I'm not supposed to be thinking that, but that's what was conditioned into me. And I had to be mindful of that to make that change, right? And so the same thing can be said sometimes within the Black community, because we have stereotypes of each other. Sometimes African Americans have stereotypes of Africans, and Africans vice versa, right? And so we need to just be mindful of these things so that hopefully we could make a change and, avoid some of these microaggressions that have hurt us for so many years.
Yeah. I guess I don't want to challenge you too much, but maybe for the devil's advocate out there who doesn't feel like there's a lot of racism going on in this world, um, how would you speak to them about some of the experiences you talk about in this book?
Yeah. No, I love that. And so if they don't think there's racism, then they haven't been turning on the TV. And if they have turned on the TV, maybe they're not on the right channel. But, if someone were to say that things have changed and there are no issues, people are complaining, people are too sensitive, they're all entitled to their opinion. Like, I can't say who's right or wrong per se, but all I can once again show the experience of other people. And if you were to be in their shoes, would you like that? I know that some people, one of the poems that I've performed before is that, I say, a lot of times when I do these poems, people get uncomfortable and I get uncomfortable too. I get uncomfortable where 11 months out of the year, I'm viewed as a suspect. But for that 1 month, that one beautiful Black History Month, I am viewed as either a survivor, a savior, or the child of a civil rights leader. I get uncomfortable when someone else's fear for me might be the reason why I get killed. I get uncomfortable where my continuous fight for freedom is viewed as another person's reason to believe it's the start of their own racist genocide, right? So it's just that idea of, when people of color or marginalized people are trying to stand up for themselves, now the other views them as, oh, wait, they're standing up for themselves and they're getting this treatment. Now I'm left in the dust and now I'm the one that's, marginalized. It doesn't work like that. It's not going to be a quick, pendulum switch. That's the first thing. And then just overall, right, it's more so acknowledging another person's story. Once again, it's more so just being open to hearing other people's stories and take it how you may from there. I'm not going to convince somebody of whatever the case may be. And that's not what this book is to do either. It's not to convince anybody. It's more so to share an experience. And for those that are going through that experience, lift up your voice, speak up. That's literally the last line in the book, is to be that voice, right? And so, yeah, it's not meant to convince anybody per se, but it's more so just to share an experience, and let people make their own decisions.
Yeah. One of the themes of this book is the narrative of becoming a man. Is there anything specifically you want to say on that?
Yeah. So, the narrative of becoming a man is kind of the central, even though there are different themes which you've highlighted, it's the central storyline that's making this story progress. It's about a narrator, presumably a Black male, that, is questioning what does it mean to be a man. I'm happy you mentioned that. I got a couple of notes here that I wanted to mention today too. Yeah. You can see it earlier in the book, right? So for that first, some of the earlier poems in the book, it's, Strange Love, from the Poplar Trees, which is the second poem in the book. A.M. Erica, once again, the symbolism of America, mentions, I need a real man. I need a real man. And this is the narrator's, childhood crush. So that's already getting in his head. A real man. What does that even mean to be a real man? And why is it so desirable? So from there, it kind of gets his brain thinking of looking for this definition, and Grandpa's Vices, which is, I believe that it's the first poem in the second chapter. He thinks he has a definition of what it means to be a man, and I can quickly read it. Okay, so Gil Scott Heron blares on the noisy speakers, and while a nosy mind can't mind its business, I hear my goals. All I want is a good home and a wife and a children and some food to feed them every night, right? Sounds like a traditional definition of a man having a wife and kids and making sure that you can, provide for them, right? And so with that kind of thinking, it kind of gives them this false idea of what it means to be a man. Or not false, but just kind of this surface layer idea of what it means to be a man. And the narrator continues on this journey, and soon that definition keeps getting challenged and challenged. Once again, that A. America character comes back into play, and you notice that it's during the Darren poems, she's intrigued by this other character named Darren that's literally the opposite of the narrator, that does everything bad, that is a stereotypical Black male. Does crimes, does everything wrong, everything wrong. And I wrote him like that on purpose because that's who America is interested in. That's who America will heighten or uplift, because she wants to see that one succeed and burn, right? That's the one that gives her attention as well, right? And so with the narrator seeing that kind of warps his own sense, because he's longing for America as well, but she's not giving him that attention anymore because she's found a real man, in her opinion. And once again, as that definition keeps cracking and cracking, and this Nala character is trying to teach him all these things about what it means to just be a Black person in general and be proud of that, still the narrator asks around for what it means to be a man, and that leads to Black Man Commandments, which, if you don't mind, could I quickly read?
100%.
Okay, cool. So Black Man Commandments, it's the first chapter in the third, it's the first poem in the third chapter. And once again, this is when the character is trying to ask, what does it mean to be a man? Like, now I'm really confused. I'm in a relationship finally with this Nala character. I need to be a real man for her, right? So this is Black Man Commandments. I had never been in a real relationship before, and I wasn't sure on how to be a real man for her. I asked my older brothers, and they said, expect to look expensive and accept your excessive needs. You're conditioned to think your self-worth lives in the condition of your needs. But if being an athlete is not your path, wrap yourself in rap. If not your own lyrics, at least live in theirs. The almighty Jehovah once said, me give my heart to a woman, never happen. I'll be forever mackled. And those are the rules you must follow. Don't swallow your pride. Cough up your dollars and spit knowledge to shorties. Make sure these bottles make it to the party, and make sure everybody knows they came from you. They came for you because their jealousy, their envy, the reason why you're the definition of toxic masculinity is due to their insecurities, not yours. Only worry about what's yours. Never take ownership of your errors, but be selfish. It's your world. Protect your ego to the core. Your cure is to disregard their hurt. Matter of fact, disregard your feelings, disregard your peers, disregard your fears. Fuck your tears. Fuck who cares? Because around here, you're the second coming. Fuck becoming a man. You're already a god, right? So obviously that is all the wrong things you should hear if you're trying to figure out what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
And so this now leads him towards a destructive path. He finds himself back in America's good graces because, once again, he's embracing these toxic qualities. And, it takes him, takes the death of his friend Darren to kind of, in a sense, snap him out. And he wants to find justice for Darren. He doesn't know how. And that kind of works simultaneously with this idea of what it means to become a man. And that leads him to church. That leads him to finding faith. That leads to now Grandpa's Wisdom, which is the first poem of the last chapter, the fourth chapter. And in that, he says, which is his final answer, Makai 6:8 is open on the nightstand. And as I stand this morning, I come closer to my goals. The requirement of man is to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with God, right? And this is a more formidable answer to him. It puts him on a much better path and, eventually leads to his own answers of not only what it means to be a man, but also what to do when someone else needs justice on your behalf. And he realizes that he had those answers in him the whole time. He was making up too many excuses, but the answer of what it means to be a man, what it means to, do right by somebody, that lived within him the whole time. And so that's just the narrative of what it means to be a man in this book.
Yeah, oh, that's incredible. Now hearing you tie it all together, it makes it's tied together very well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess there are some aspects of like Black excellence, though, that you also talk about. For example, with your sisters. Do you want to talk about that point as well?
Yeah. So the Black excellence piece is really highlighted when this Nala character, right, this strong Black woman, is showing him how to love himself, right? And this is the woman that, gets him away from America. And it's honestly probably my favorite part of the book. It's obviously the more happier poems, the more lovey poems. But it's, this Black empowerment as well. And so I really wanted that Nala character to not serve as his savior per se, but someone to just, once again, help him realize that these things already lived within him and stop trying to gain it, to gain the attention of all these outside sources that don't matter when you are already perfect the way you are. You are already good. And the poem that represents that the most is Nala's lesson. If you don't mind, I would love to quickly read that. Yes, so Nala's lessons. And this actually comes right after a poem called The Bite, which really dives into that earlier topic I mentioned earlier about the conflict between African Americans and Africans, where this cousin character is challenging Nala and kind of making her feel bad for emigrating to this country. But Nala helps her realize that no, we're literally the same. Like, we shouldn't be beefing. And then Nala kind of finishes off with this poem, which is called Nala's Lessons. Okay, or Nala's Lessons. They never taught us about our African past, but we know we were, scratch that, we are kings and queens. Peasants can't silence royalty because Black voices lift their streams and rivers, forced our ancestors to live nightmares. Now we must live out their dreams. From night shifts to 9 to 5 to 99 problems, but money ain't one for Black sons and daughters. The heritage of Black excellence is not learned, it's inherited. Right. So once again, like, this is, thank you. This is, things that you innately have, that sometimes you just have to find it within yourself to be proud of who you are. And once again, not fall victim or fall for the trap of these outside sources, one being an AM Erica type, a force that wants everything out of you, but it's so quick to throw you away when it's convenient. So that's some of the moments of that Black excellence. And the narrator realizes he made a mistake going back to America even after learning this about himself, and he tries to come back to Nala, which, I guess, not to spoil, but you all will see if she receives him when he tries to return. But
the other poem with Family Cookout. Do you want to talk about the bolded lines in case anyone's not sure about why those are bolded?
Yeah. So Family Cookout, right? So within the narrative, this is when the narrator is bringing Nala to meet his family. That's really, the message that was behind that poem. And I wanted Family Cookout to kind of be messy. I wanted it to kind of represent how it feels to be at a family cookout. To help me out, I had to dig back to some of my inspirations. So with this book in general, my main inspirations were Good Kid, Mad City, Kendrick Lamar. I just love that album, and I love that it is a narrative of young Black men in Compton going through a day in the life, basically, and how that goes up and down like crazy, but it ties in so beautifully. And then also Boys in the Hood. And so even this is an Easter egg, right? So Darren in this book, right, is based on Ice Cube's character in Boys in the Hood. So Boys in the Hood, Ice Cube's character, his name is Doughboy, fresh out of jail. You could tell he's an intellectual man, but he's been in this system for so long that he falls back to crime a lot, and even when he kills his brother's assailant, he feels bad for that, and it eventually leads to his demise as well. But Doughboy's real name is Darren, which I had to do digging for that. So his real name is Darren in the movie. That's what he's casted as, and so that's why I named my character, my kind of representation of that, Darren as well, right? So Boys in the Hood, love that movie. It has a lot of there's a lot of symbolism in this book based on that. And for Family Cookout, I took a couple of lines from Boys in the Hood. I also took, sorry, getting a call. I also took some lines from Poetic Justice, and I kind of just smashed them all together, right? So the lines that are bolded are actually from these movies, right? So real quick, right, it says, Mama's on the grill. He knows I didn't like his last girlfriend, right? So that's what Ricky's mom says to, I forgot who she mentioned that to, but she mentions that in general, right? And in this narrative, it's the mother saying that to Nala, right, his last girlfriend. Ribs smacked in barbecue. Someone got big because of time. I ain't no criminal. I can read, bitch. That's Ice Cube's line. And so I won't go through all of this, but like once again, all these lines actually come from these movies, Boys in the Hood and Poetic Justice. And actually one other Easter egg, right? So there's a line that says, her name is Shalika or Aisha. Do we got a girlfriend? You killing my action. That's actually two different characters. I think Shalika is from Boys in the Hood and Aisha is from Poetic Justice, but they're acted by the same actress, which is Regina King. And so that's why I put both of her names. And actually, Do We Got a Girlfriend? That's from Boys in the Hood. And then You Killing My Action is from Poetic Justice. So I kind of just put them together since it's the same actress. And I love her in general. She's awesome. But yeah, so that's one of my favorite poems, just because it was pretty fun writing it. And I hope, once again, readers enjoy it as well.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about the song Rain and what that means?
Yeah. So Rain is my baby. Rain, I first wrote that honestly in 2016, which is crazy. That's what 6 years ago now. So I wrote that a long time ago. In Mississippi, I used to go to Mississippi once a year in college to do volunteer work. And I think I wrote it around that time, and it was inspired by a Chance the Rapper song, also titled Drown. I believe it's titled Drown. And No Name is the one that performs it, and she starts off by Lord Rain Down on Me. The thing with me, part of my creative writing style or process, is I love to listen to music, and I can hear a beat and tune out someone else's voice and just go off the beat. And sometimes to start myself, I just need to hear one line from them, and then I can fill in the rest. So when I heard No Name say Lord Rain Down on Me, I just went crazy with that. I said, Lord Rain Down on Me, and please keep me going. You made my skin so beautiful, black and glowing. There's no reason why the media keeps on showing all the pain in this world when there's so much healing. Like, it just started like that, and I just let it flow.
Yeah.
And it started off as a freestyle, but then I started to do poetry, and I was like, let me just turn this into a poem. And I was putting it into this book, in the religious chapter. And I started to get this idea, and shout out to my friends as well for giving me this idea, but why not just turn it into a song? I think at first I had the idea of turning it and putting like hymns to it, as if you're reading it like you're at church and there's actual notes on there, like if you're like reading one of the songs there. But then, I got the recommendation, what if you could actually turn this into a song? And so I ran with that. My good friend, Alvin Chingo, also a BC alum, shout out to him and Kari King. They do dope music. If there's anything you're going to do after this interview, after you already bought my book, go listen to them. They're awesome. But he did the production on the song. It was cool. I've never made a song before. I've never written a song before. And so to just be in that producing, atmosphere, that was really cool. I love music. And then it came down to actually finding the singers, which was a long process, a really long process, right? I said I had Rain already written from 2016. I wasn't looking for a singer for 6 years, but I definitely was looking for a singer for probably about a year.
Yeah.
And a lot of like people that were like, oh, I love this idea. Sorry, I don't have enough time. Like a lot of like stringing me along, and like that's the thing with working with other creatives. You need a lot of patience sometimes. And it was tough, but luckily there was one singer I knew who actually she came to my last performance before COVID in February of 2019. She came to my performance. My cousin brought her to the performance just so that we could, in general, network, right? And I got to know her a little bit more. She has an amazing voice. I got to learn more about her singing, and it kind of just like dawned on me, like, why don't I just reach out to her? Thank God she said yes. And like, she should have been my number one choice from the get-go. Everything happens for a reason. I think God gave me a lot of no's because he was like, stop looking out there. There's somebody that you already know. And so I reached out to her. Her name is Brianna Denise. Amazing singer, really, really talented. Like she's good. So she sang the song, and I won't get into too much detail, but like she sang that song so fast, like I barely had to give her direction. Like I think we needed like 2 run-throughs, and she just sang it. And to hear someone sing my lyrics, something that I knew was a poem initially, just like, because it was me singing. All the demos that we were doing, it was me singing. I ain't the best singer. I ain't Beyonce. Like, I'm not the best singer. So like finally having a real singer's voice on there was amazing. And then her friend, Faith Hash, also amazing. She did the background vocals and really took it to another level. She added like gaps and holes and she like filled in gaps and holes that I didn't know were there. And so, and there's a little sprinkle of me, some of the demo stuff that we did, kept it in there. Yeah. I've been told it sounds good, so that's why I haven't taken it out. But and the song will be by the time this interview is out, I think the song would already be out too. So everyone go check out the song Rain on Spotify, Apple Music. Literally, it's going to be everywhere. Also YouTube Music. And, please, if you like the song, comment on it, share it. And if my voice ain't the greatest, let me know. Because then next book, when I got a new song, I'll stay out of it. Or if you want to hear more of me, let it get to my head. I'll do the whole song only. Nah, but yeah, so the Rain was an awesome project. It was a labor of love because it took a long time to get it done, but I'm really happy with where it got to. And lastly, last shout out to DJ Fab and DJ El Cid. They helped with like kind of the final mixes and making sure everything sounded like crystal clear and serene and like holy. So yeah, I'm excited for people to hear that song. And for it to be out there and all these amazing people I just mentioned, for them to be recognized for their great work.
Yeah. The cover, there's 3 of them. Do you want to talk about that process and the symbolism there?
Yeah. So with the 3 covers, right, Situationship obviously had 1 cover, amazing cover drawn by Jordan Barrows, another like dope Boston artist. He, shout out to him. He did an amazing cover, but it was just 1 cover. And for the new book, I was thinking, all right, what can I do that's different? And part of it was during that time, I had gotten a Kanye vinyl for My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I'm sure I said that acronym probably wrong, long title, but it's my favorite Kanye album. Let's say Dark Fantasy, right? And I got the vinyl. I had like a vinyl phase. And in the vinyl, it comes with like the posters, the different covers, which I kind of had forgotten that album had several different like alternative covers. It had obviously 1 official cover for retail, but it had alternative covers. And you can't see it now, but on my wall are 3 of the alternative covers that I love the most. And so I just had this up there for like, 3 years now, 2-3 years. And I'm just staring at these 3 covers. I'm just like, yeah, that's it. That's what I'm doing. Doing 3 covers. And I want these 3 covers to continue the story, right? Once again, these 3 themes of love, religion, and social injustice, race. And so I was able to find an artist to work on that. Her name is Halima Smith, also known as Art Piece. She is dope. She's on Instagram. Her account is like blowing up like crazy. I'm really, really lucky. I think I got to her before it was going like really crazy, because then maybe her price point would have been a lot higher. But I think I got there at a good time. But like shout out to her because she made 3 dope covers. All told, they all tell different stories. They all have little, on each cover you'll see "Be That Voice." You just have to search for it. It's and some it's easier than others, but each cover has "Be That Voice." And the love cover is the official cover. The religious cover, which is like a Black woman with chains, the biggest one being like a cross pendant. That one is the ebook cover. And then the social justice cover is a cover of a protest. That is the limited edition one. So that limited edition, by the time this interview is done, I don't think it'll be out yet and how it's going to be out, but it will be out soon. And if anyone's interested in that, just be on the lookout because that's a really dope cover. It's got to be in the hands of people. I can't keep that to myself the whole time. So that's kind of the thought process behind the 3 covers. Just once again, tell this story. I wanted this book to be more than just a book. I wanted it to be multimedia with these 3 covers, with the marketing component of it, with all the videos and everything I tied into it. I wanted this to be an experience, similar to the release event, which we could talk about too. But everything is more than just what it looks like on surface, and that's what kind of led to, once again, that the 3 covers.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the collaboration with Joe Tavaras?
Yeah. So shout out to Joe, another one of my good close friends, another dope artist, and that's been in the works, I think, for years. So for more background, Joe and I were on the same step team back at Boston College, and we've always worked together creatively in that sense. Obviously in a different capacity, but like one thing I really love about Joe is that Joe is really good at listening. He's really good at listening and then putting action to things. When we're on the team, whether I'm providing him feedback, he listens. Whether we need him to speak up and share his own opinion on something that we're questioning, he speaks up, right? So Joe is like a great definition of a good collaborator because he's just a good person in general. And so that was kind of our origins. But then as he starts to get into the art space, we're like, yo, we got to collab at some point. At some point, we got to do something like no brainer, right? And so by the time I came to Joe, I think it was early last year. Yeah, it may have been early last year. And I told Joe, this is a funny story. So I told Joe, this is what I'm doing, this book. And I feel bad because I kept telling Joe, like, it's going to be released mid next year. Or I told him like early next year. And it went to mid next year. And it went to like end of last year. Sorry, all this is last year. And now it's coming out like mid, 2022. So I felt bad for Joe because I kept pushing it. But, I told Joe about the idea. Overall, him making a painting inspired by a poem in the book. And he loved that idea. And it was interesting because with Joe, he had never done this before too, even though he's really eager to do it. There was a moment of, not to get into too much detail, but there was a moment where he just didn't know if he could do it. Not because he wasn't able to do it, but just because I think he thought that he needed to fulfill whatever I wanted him to do in that regard. Sometimes people like to be like over whoever they're collaborating with and make sure that they get their idea and vision correct. I'm not like that. I'm working with you for a reason, right? Like even you, like I'm doing this interview for a reason because you have a lens that I don't, and I want you to add that lens to my own vision. So I'm a very easygoing like collaborator. I just need communication. That's literally it. But like, do your thing. I'm just here to watch and be amazed too. So once I gave him that green light, like it went from like, I don't know if I could do this to now, hey Joe, here's the green light. Do whatever you want to do, bro. Like I'm not gonna impede on your creative process. A day later, he goes, all right, can you send me a video of you performing the poem? Because he listens to music when he's painting. And so like he just needs that sound to like give him inspiration and like boom, go away at it. I was working at the time, so I couldn't like respond immediately. An hour later, he goes, painting's done. Never mind. You want to come see it? And I'm just like, wait, what? Like that's a crazy like 180. Like you first went from like, I don't know if I can do this to like, can you send me a video? It's like, it's done. Don't even worry about the videos. And when I came to his studio and saw this amazing, huge painting, like I think he told me it's one of his biggest pieces. It's huge. It's beautiful. I was amazed. I was amazed that it was made so quickly. I was amazed by like, I let him choose whatever lines he wanted from the book. And he chose Black Roses as the poem, and he chose a certain line in there that I just thought was like brilliant. And like it was awesome. And that painting is like, there's a reason why we cherish it so much, because it's so beautiful, and how it was created was beautiful. And that painting has been done for nearly a year. Like we've had it tucked away for nearly a year because I had to get everything else lined up marketing wise and the book wise. So to be finally able to, show it to people, I'm sure for him, but I know for me, like, is like a blessing in itself. And I'm happy to see the response that people are getting or that are giving from it. And yeah, so like that was more so that project with Joe. Shout out to Joe once again.
Yeah. Is there any other symbolism or things within the book that you want to talk about? Otherwise, I might ask some more general questions.
Let me see real quick. Any other symbolism or like little Easter eggs that people might not notice when reading it initially. Oh, I got one. Yeah. So another inspiration, I know I mentioned Boys in the Hood and Good Kid, Mad City. I'm really inspired by Biggie and Tupac. And I may have said this in my first interview, but like I'm big on like having dead mentors. Which for anyone that's not familiar with that, it's like, you have mentors in life, but you also have mentors that might not be alive anymore. But anytime that you have a question or like, you're getting into, let's say, music, let me go look at what Pop did. Let me go look at what Biggie did. You can consider them as a mentor. So like they're some of my biggest inspirations. And, they're in this book a lot. So for example, in the dedication, it's not even a titled poem, but for the dedication, you'll notice that and life after that is not life after death. For you, small problems are no biggie. To pop pits full of money are wanted, but a mind full of resiliency is needed. And inside of it, I don't know if people can see, but so any animation or any drawings you see in here, it is me. Shout out to me. So I got my little doodle on. That's a Tupac bandana, and then that's Biggie's crown. Yeah. Right. So those are just my little nods to them. But it gets a little bit deeper later on, where I say during the section where it's really like the Nala and the narrator kind of being in love and enjoying their love. I have a poem called "When I Die," and it's actually inspired by "Suicidal Thoughts" by Biggie. And so Suicidal Thoughts is enough to be said, like it's a cry for help, like on Biggie's end. But I decided to kind of take that song and kind of warp it to like now in this section of the book, once again, it's when they're falling in love with each other and they're enjoying themselves. But the narrator is kind of desperate. Like this is something he desperately needs. He needs this kind of love. So that's why I wrote everything I'm about to say is, if you listen to Suicidal Thoughts, you'll hear where I got this from, at least rhythm wise. But this is called "When I Die." So when I die, fuck it, I want to be with you. This red and blue put me through bull and shit that isn't hard to tell. It doesn't make sense leaving you and being with the others born in white. I want black love and black power. So that's from that rhythm per se is from Suicidal Thoughts for that cadence. But then right after I have, but if I die tonight, my ignorance, despite desires for parity, is passion placed in poetry. So if I die tonight, that's actually a song by Tupac, right? So I decided to kind of bring those two together and write this poem "When I Die," to kind of represent that duality and this idea of this tough subject of dying and stuff like that. But I just represent desperation of what would you want to do if you knew your time was coming. And for this book, he just wants to be with this Nala character. And so, yeah, so that's what I would say when it comes to any other symbolism. There's more Biggie and Tupac all over the place. Black Man Commandments is a nod to the 10 Crack Commandments by Biggie. No matter how you try is a nod to Tupac. It's from a Tupac song. And then also I Get Around 2022 is also based or inspired by I Get Around, with the Tupac song. And yeah, and even the title I Am You, I can maybe share that in another question, but also inspired by Tupac.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool. It's really nice to see not just having read this book prior to the interview. Now a lot of that is really intricate and really really well weaved together. Yeah. I haven't asked you about the title actually. Do you want to talk about I Am You?
Yeah. So I am you. Title is very interesting. A lot of behind the scenes stuff with the title. But for the title, so in general, it took a really long time to come up with a title. That was like one of my earlier challenges with this book. This book was untitled for a really long time, like a long time. I think for Easter egg, I guess. The initial title, like one of the early front runners, was "Dying to Live with You." Um, where I don't have to go into detail on like how it would have looked like logo wise, but
Yeah.
dying to live with you, because I thought it represented both this the dying piece, which is like a social injustice piece, racial piece, and then to live with you, the like the lovey dovey side of things. So I thought
Yeah.
it married those two really well. But sometimes with us creatives, we think we're the most genius people in the world and no one ever thought of this idea. And so like what I first did was just type in dying to live with you. And there was mad other books already had that title.
Yeah.
Um I'm very confident in my work. So I knew my book would have been the best out of all of those, but why even compete like that? So that was one of the reasons why I couldn't do that one. But I was just searching for titles, and I heard a Tupac song, one of his, I think his first album. And I've forgotten the line, unfortunately, but the line had to do with the idea of this is who you made me, like this, like you made me like this, right? And then also I heard, I'm also a big Jay Z fan, and Jay Z, this I remember. So Picasso baby, where Jay Z says, "Look, America, this is how you made me. Come through with the yay mask on." Like I just hearing that this is how you made me, and my brain went to, I am, I am who you made. I am who you made me. That was the initial title. I am who you made me, and it would have been, I am who you made. I am who you made me. So I
Mhm.
am you was always going to stick out.
Yeah.
Over some time, things happened, and eventually, I decided to shorten it to just I am you, which I think is the better title. It rolls off the tongue a lot better. I am you. And the reason why I have blessed, strong, and everything, um, it's up to interpretation. If people read I am you and then see blessed, strong, everything, hopefully you feel like you're blessed, strong, and you are everything. Um, but also blessed, strong, and everything. Those three lines come from a poem in the book, to my sisters, where I say, "You are blessed, you are strong, you are everything they once said was wrong." And so it's just, a couple of nods to different things. But that's kind of how I got to I Am You. It was a long process, but I'm happy with the result. And I just hope that people are able to see whenever I'm wearing this hat, or when I start releasing some of the merch with the I Am You logo, people see that and it brings warmth to them and it makes them feel connected versus, separated, because that's how our country is already so separated. I just want something for people to see and just immediately connect. One time I was at a store and somebody was just staring at the top of my head. I started to wonder, like, what's up there? I forgot I had the hat on. And they were just like, "What's that say over there?" I'm like, "It says I am you," which is the weirdest thing to tell somebody, I am you,
Yep.
that you've never met before. But I hope that they appreciated just hearing that from someone that looked completely different from them. And I'm hoping that other people get that same, feeling. And hopefully we can bring us together, even though it's something as small as the title.
Yeah. I'm curious, just from in terms of your process, how was it trying to recall some of these memories and things of that I mean, these are tough. There's some bullying with the dialect. There's people saying go back to your own country. There's like, a food fight. Was it interesting trying to, like, I feel like a lot of people have to forget these memories in order to move on, and
Yeah.
was it interesting trying to like remember all these incidents or things that happened?
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree with what you're saying and understand it, because there are some things that are so traumatic that people tend to like tuck it away. Um, but for me, I would even use traumatic as the word for them. Like these are just things that happened, and like luckily it has never, or at least it hasn't affected me in a detrimental way to the point where I can't handle these things and all of that. Like I'm comfortable talking about these things because I don't know, it's the way I was raised or God made me, but like I'm just comfortable sharing my experience, right? So that people are able to understand it and can learn from it. People that look like me, people that don't look like me. So when I think back to like when I was in middle school, being called an African booty scratcher, like that was a thing to make you feel bad for being African.
Yeah.
I don't know why that was a thing, but that was a thing, right? And so I have that in the book as well, where I say real quick, I say, my teacher asked if I can do a better job than her. I say we're all from here, point to Africa, and get called the booty scratcher. Class laughs. My truth is funnier than Will Smith and Martin. Um, these are just things so that people are putting themselves in the shoes of this person that is all these little micro things, all these micro things. And hopefully as you continue to read them and as they start to pile up in the book, if it affects you, right? I keep noticing these like little small comments that are being made. I don't like that. That's you reading this book. Imagine actually experiencing it growing up, right? And that's why childhood is a really important chapter because it sets the stage for what's to come after. And so to answer your question, like it wasn't tough to think back to these times. It was more so of like to share your experience, man. It was cathartic just to get these things out. And some of the early reviews that I've gotten from the book, from reputable places, they all highlighted that this is someone's experience. Some of that might be fictional. Most of it is not. And they appreciate that honesty and that vulnerability because that it allows the reader to hopefully be vulnerable with themselves as well, right? And put themselves into my shoes or this narrator's shoes.
Yeah. Do you ever get tired? I think it's, you've maintained a level of passion, even despite George Floyd being a mainstream news, we just had, what was it, a week ago, Jalen Walker being shot at 90 times.
Yeah.
Do you have your days?
What's unfortunate is like my initial answer is no. I don't. And it's more so, and the reason why it's sad is because like I'm getting way too desensitized to this. Where when George Floyd happened, and also the thing with George Floyd is too, like, it was recorded, right? And so if I see George Floyd, if I see Eric Gardner, like when I see those kind of things, it's really hard to like ignore. But when you just get a report that there's been another shooting these days in 2022, it's just like an eye roll at this point. It went from like I can't keep my eyes off of the TV to now an eye roll because it's just I'm becoming too desensitized to it. When the shooting happened with at the grocery store with the
Buffalo,
I think it was 10. Yeah, in Buffalo,
yeah.
I think it was 10 victims. I don't want to be disrespectful to their families, but I think it was 10 though. Could be wrong, but the Buffalo shooting.
Yeah.
My initial reaction was another one. Like again, it shouldn't be like that. I should not be saying again. I should be outraged, and I am outraged, but it's more of I don't know what else to do, and that's why, and that's what the narrator deals with in the book when his brother, his friend, has been killed. What else can he do? And once again, the answer that this grandpa figure gives to him is just simply be that voice. And I know be that voice is so like generic, but I do that on purpose for people to fill in that answer for themselves. What does it mean to be that voice? It doesn't mean to be like me that does poetry for anyone that's willing to hear, right? Or does it mean to start a charity? Or does it mean to be a person of color in a corporate space and being able to be outspoken and shed light on some of these topics to their colleagues that aren't of the same culture, right? What does it mean to be that voice? It could be taken into different places. And hopefully, as we're all trying to be that voice with our own definition, it leads to some change. It leads to some gun control. It leads to some of our politicians actually caring about the things that need attention. right? We can't come off of making this reversing Roe versus Wade and, forcing some of these people to continue to have their babies, but yet there's no gun control. And these babies are at danger, or these parents are at danger anyway. Like, it's just so backwards to me. It's so backwards to me, but all we can do is be hopeful at this point. All we can do is be hopeful, and just try to be that voice in our collective spaces.
I guess, do you have any advice for, allies on creating a better America?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. How can I be a better ally? Two answers. I'll start off by saying that to be an ally, you first off have to be comfortable learning about another person's culture, and don't feel like just because you're not of that culture, you can't speak up. And as I say this, take it all with a grain of, to the viewers, take it all with a grain of salt, because that does not mean be a social media activist. There's nothing wrong with that. However, sometimes, in Childish Gambino or Donald Glover, his latest season of Atlanta, he tackles this, which is brilliant the way he tackles it. But of fake woke people, both black and white, or just everyone in between. But just don't take this all with a grain of salt when I say it's okay to speak up for others. You don't want to be a white savior or things like that. But when I say speak up for others and be comfortable doing so, I more so mean, and I more so say from a place of experience, right? So, for example, at work, last year I was in charge of we do monthly DE&I sessions, and I was in charge of running the Pride Month DE&I session. I am a straight male that identifies as a male. I don't know a lot about that, LGBTQ plus stuff. However, I wanted to learn more about it, right? And I was able to talk to some of my colleagues that were of that culture, of that sexuality, and also just do my research on the origins of Pride Month. And it was really cool. It was really cool to just learn about another person's experience. Sometimes as a Black male, just being candid, sometimes I think oh, I don't need to learn anything because I'm the one that they need to learn about. I'm the one that's the minority. Learn about me. It doesn't work like that. Sometimes you gotta learn about other people's culture, right? So I got to learn about the LGBTQ plus community, and I enjoyed it. It opened up my eyes, and that helped me become a better ally because I was able to create a space with this event for other colleagues to be able to share, their own journeys and own stories, things that they had never done prior. I had, a colleague of mine come out in a professional space. No one had known.
Yeah.
And she felt comfortable because I was able to provide that kind of safe space for her. Someone that doesn't even come from that community, right? So from a place of experience, for allies, open your eyes by learning about another person's culture. Talk to these people. Don't just do the research, but talk to these people of different cultures. And then that helps you to feel comfortable providing a safe space, right? So that's the first answer. The second answer is now you've created a safe space, right, for these people, hopefully, for marginalized people. You've created a space where we're all learning. That's cool. So you got to talk to your friends, the friends that are never going to be in this space, the friends that are never going to want to learn, the friends that are going to say inappropriate jokes, insensitive jokes, because they're around y'all. You have your own circle of friends that are going to feel comfortable saying some, messed up stuff because they're around each other and they don't think anyone's going to correct them. If you hear a joke or you hear something that isn't correct based off of everything you've learned from this community, you need to speak up. You can't just chuckle and laugh or in the back of your head say, if I bring it up, I'm going to ruin the vibe. It's going to be awkward. You have to say something because I'm never going to be in that space. And even if I was in that space, they're not going to feel comfortable straight up saying those jokes to me because I'm there. But if that's someone that is their friend, someone that looks like them, someone that is their relative, you say, hey, that's not cool. I know you're joking, but you can't say those kind of things. They may either accept that and say, my fault, you're right. Good for me to know that. Or they may say you're being sensitive. Relax. It's just a joke. Even though they may have been defensive, in the back of their mind, they know that, oh, last time I said this comment or joke, I got resistance. So now this next time that I'm going to say it, I'm either not going to say it because I don't want that resistance again, or I'm going to kind of, think through what I want to say, because that seed has been planted in the back of my mind, right? So that's my advice to people that want to be allies. Learn about the culture, hear stories from people, then also correct some of your own people, because I won't be able to talk to them like you can. So yeah, that's what I would say to that.
Yeah. Another question is, there might be some, younger aspiring poets that are looking at your journey and saying, I want to do something similar to him when I grow up. Do you have any advice for those types of people?
Yeah. So I would say, if you have a dream, first off, don't feel like rushed to like get to like whatever space you're gonna get to. It's a whole journey. It takes a while. It's a slow grind. Sometimes it's not quick. So that's the first thing. But if you're really passionate about it, also have a plan, have a strategy. It doesn't mean you have to know how you get from A to B to C to D. Like, it doesn't mean that, but just know what maybe your end goal is, per se. So for me, when I was in college, or in high school, actually, as early as high school, I knew I wanted to write books. But then I did research and I realized how much, authors usually make. Everyone is J.K. Rowling, right? Like, it's not going to be quick and easy. Not everyone is Amanda Gorman, right? Yeah. Like, it's not going to be like that for a lot of people. So you can't. Some people might not be able to live off of that, right? So I knew that because of my research, and I decided, well, I want to have a business-oriented background. My parents own a store, so I kind of already had that background. But in college, I was an English major, and I knew that even with English majors, and I did that because I loved writing. So I wanted to work on my craft as a writer, get really good at that. That's when I really learned how to write poetry throughout my English major time at Boston College. Shout out to all the amazing English department there. But I knew that I didn't want an traditional English job after college. Traditional English job would be a teacher or a journalist. There's nothing wrong with those jobs. Those people are heroes too. But I just knew that for me, I didn't want to do that. Just in general, I didn't want to be either of those things. And also, I wanted a more stable sense of living financially. So I knew I wanted to go into business. And what I did during my summers in college, because I already knew this end goal, during my summers in college, during the semester, I'm doing my English major thing. But during the summers, I'm doing business-oriented internships. My first internship was a marketing one at a startup. I didn't get paid a dime. Second internship was a sales role. I didn't get a dime. Like, I probably lost money, like, just on gas and stuff. And it's like a startup CEO was as old as I am. Like, I mean, startup. But like, some of the things that we did was, like, we made websites for mom and pop shops. And like, we would literally go to these, like, we would scout them out on Google Maps, like literally search through Google Maps for restaurants or stores that, if you see like John's Pizza Shop, and then I type in John's Pizza Shop online in that city and it doesn't pop up, you don't have a website. So we would literally go to those places and like just pitch our services. We weren't the best at it. Okay. I even got a couple of like hard no's, like not just a no, but like a no, and like, you don't deserve to be on this earth type of no, like a damn, like, yeah, like damn. But yeah. I took that, and I was able to share that experience in my interviews, right? My senior interviews with different companies, and luckily I got an offer from Citizens Bank. Shout out to Citizens, great company. I recommend anyone to work there. Amazing colleagues there. I'm doing some great work, but I think that was one of the reasons why I was hired, because I was able to diversify my resume. I was an English major, which means I know how to write, I know how to communicate effectively, but I also have this business background for startups, right? I made that passionate decision to do this work, marketing work, sales work, being able to take a no like that. Like, I think they appreciated that. And I share all of this, not as a tangent, but I share all of this because I got that job that funded my dream. This is where it comes back to the book. I loved Citizens. I was able to teach financial literacy for years, and I loved working there. But I knew that it was also funding my passion, which was to do publishing or to do poetry, to do writing, right? And to publish your work, that costs money, or self-publish it. It costs money, not cheap. So my job funded that in a sense, right? For Situationship, I wasn't worried about funds. I wasn't worried about how much money I got from the copies I sold, because money was not the issue. I had money from my job, my day-to-day job, which allowed me to be more experimental and more creative and do this out of love versus out of money. So to answer your question, for anyone that has a dream, especially of getting into poetry or writing books, know what your strategy is. Your strategy might not be my strategy, right? But I started off knowing, I did my research. I knew that they didn't make enough money, or usually most authors don't make enough money. How do I fund my dream? I knew all this early, and then I started to create my story to now fund what now has led to Situationship and I Am You. And so just know what you want to do, ahead of time. Have your long-term goal. Doesn't have to be step by step, but know your long-term goal and start to strategize from there.
Yeah. Well, Osamase, we've talked about quite a bit. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get a chance to?
I think we have got to everything. If just to finish it off, I could read 2 more poems.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
All right, cool. So these next 2 poems are from a section of the book where the character, once again, his brother has passed or has been murdered. And he, is trying to figure out how to, bring justice to his brother. And that now leads to these next 2 poems. The first one is How to Apply Pressure. And for context on this poem I wrote after Breonna Taylor, when the cops that shot her were not charged, or at least were not found guilty. I can't remember if they were charged or not, but they weren't found guilty. I don't even know if they got to that point, but they weren't found guilty. Instead, her family was given $12 million, which, I think that's not enough. And so I wrote this poem at that time, once again, in the context of this book. It's the character's one of his answers to how to apply pressure after a murder. How to apply pressure. We vote because freedom can't be sold. We vote because 12 million won't bring back a beautiful Black soul and won't amount to all the times we have to fight back tears and whisper, we miss her. And it definitely won't buy them into a future where their privilege is no longer an issue. Yes, we cried for change, but used dollar bills are not tissue. We need new sheets of laws, love, and liability to keep our eyes dry, to keep Black lives alive, to deny their bullets from ever seeing the light of day on the darkest of skin. How to apply pressure.
Amazing.
And so that's How to Apply Pressure. And then also the next poem after that is To the Black Cops, right? So now, once again, this is a section of the book where the character, this is his starting to learn, okay, how can I fight back in a sense, right? So this is To the Black Cops. To the Black cops who even hate the Blacks of their gums, wait. Before I continue, this poem is not to the Black cops who did everything to make it through, whose skin went from black and blue, from brutality bruises to earning a suit black and blue and a badge of honor too, who joined the force to protect their own people from the blunt force that abused them for too many years, who desired to stop gang violence, not realizing they joined the biggest one, who cry guilty tears every time they hear their peers survived another court trial where a child was murdered with the reason unclear. This poem is not to you. So back to the Black cops who even hate the Blacks of their gums. Don't you realize no matter who you make a life with, you will have a child who will be Black too? The Black cops.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah. So just wanted to share those last 2 with you.
Yeah. For anybody that wants to support you or what you're doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yes. So by the time this interview is out, the book won't be out yet. But even so, if you hear this much later on, buy the book, please. I hope you've enjoyed this interview so far. And, now that I kind of brought light to a lot of the symbolic meaning behind a lot of things in the book, hopefully this kind of gives you a second reading in a sense. And so you can buy the book on Amazon, at Barnes and Noble, like Google Books, it's everywhere. And so yeah, it's I Am You, a book of poetry. And when you do buy the book, fingers crossed, when you do buy the book, also please feel free to rate it as well. Also feel free to put an honest review. I'm not asking for only good reviews. Please be as honest as possible. I would appreciate that. But yeah, I would love for that to happen. And also, you can follow me on Instagram at Osamase Ekhator. If you follow me, I usually follow back. So feel free to do so. And a lot of my work is on there as well, especially a lot of the marketing that went into this, which a lot of those videos kind of add another layer to these poems as well. And then lastly, visit my site. It's osamaseekhator.com. It'll keep you up to date with everything that's going on with me and I Am You and all of my poetry work in general. There's going to be the ebook will be on there as well. Merchandise will be there too. So, and just reach out to me. You can reach out to me on Instagram or on my site, whether you are, you have honest feedback for I Am You, whether you just want to learn more about my journey, whether you are creative, doesn't even have to be poetry. You just want to chop it up, talk, learn more about my process, ask me questions about your process. I'm an open book, so I just love to talk to people, and I love to help my community. I love to help people learn. I love to uplift people as well. So, those are the ways to support me.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. As I'm saying, I just want to acknowledge you, man. It's really awesome to watch you, continue to, give perspective on the experience of a Black person in America. And like I said, I think a lot of us as people of color can get lazy in terms of, just accepting the norm as the norm. And you're really, with these books and these poems are really changing the narrative in terms of just providing that context of what it is, someone that's grown up white all their life with no accent or anything like that doesn't have a perspective of this, and you're trying to provide that perspective. And just respect you continuing to write and make poetry, even with everything going on in life. And I wish you the best. This is an absolutely terrific piece of work, with especially with all the context of the symbolism and everything. This is a really really good piece of work. And I hopefully the broader public recognizes that. But even if they don't, that, man, this is incredible.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.